So hello and welcome to the August 12th episode of Around the Block. I'm your host, Dave Yornak. I'm also the Director of Blockchain Strategy and Ecosystem Development here at Tron DAO. And Around the Block is another way the Tron DAO continually seeks to engage with our community, and certainly I think is part of the commitment that we have to our communities and as well as our community growth and success. The Around the Block series, if you've been watching, it brings together blockchain leaders and crypto leaders from really around the world. And together we explore the technical, strategic, and even social aspects of this industry. So you can find Around the Block each week on our DLive protocol, as well as on our Tron DAO YouTube channel. So DLive, if you've never heard of it, that's the largest blockchain live streaming service, and each person on DLive has the opportunity to become their own broadcaster with their own channel. So with that, we are going to get underway. But before we dive in with the guests, I want to talk to you about the Tron Grand Hackathon. We are just wrapping up season 2. Voting ended on August 11th. We had over 1,800 entries in this second season, which is really phenomenal. Those 1,800 have been narrowed down to 200, and now those 200 projects are each in the running for a portion of the $1 million in total prize money. So if you miss this round, don't worry, because there's another one coming up. Hackathon, season 3 of the hackathon is just around the corner and kicks off sometime in September. So be sure to watch for that. All right, now let's get to our guests. So we have two very distinguished guests with us today from the trading world of crypto, as well as the venture investing side of crypto. So from Mirana, we have Sean Tan. He's the head of asset management. What Mirana does is they invest in entrepreneurs, projects, and funds in deal sizes that range anywhere from 50,000 to 50 million, which in the crypto space is a significant size. Some of their incubated groups, or some of the groups that they've incubated, include BitDAO, Decrypt, and Bybit, as well as Windringer Labs. So Sean, welcome to the show. Now from Wintermute, we have David Micley. David is the Director of Business Development at Wintermute. Now, what is Wintermute? They kind of fly under the radar, right? Haven't heard of them too much. They are a global algorithmic market maker, and that does not mean they make markets in algorithms. They are a market maker in digital assets, and they create liquid and efficient markets on centralized and decentralized trading platforms and even off exchange. So guys, welcome to the podcast. Glad to have you both here.
Thanks for having us. It's great to be here.
Thing. Yeah. So why don't we start it off just talking about, a little bit about the crypto market coming out of Q2. Q2 was kind of, to put it nicely, it was difficult. With Bitcoin was down nearly 60%, and was one of the better performing cryptos in the market. And really for crypto overall, it's his worst quarter since 2011, if you can believe that. So, what did you guys see in your worlds as that was happening? And then now that we're kind of through that quarter, moving into Q3 and calmer waters, what do you see happening now? So David, why don't we start with you on the trading side?
Yeah, sure. And thanks again for having me. Really great to be here. Great to be on the show with Sean and with you, David. I guess, a few things. First, just looking at the past quarter, obviously a lot of activity, a lot of volatility, a lot of things that, could have gone wrong that did go wrong. And now we're in this sort of new environment. Definitely feels like a bear market. And, in some ways that's tough, right? I mean, you look at the numbers and it says it all, right? TVL going from, I think it was at a high of 170 billion, at the peak, to 70 billion now. Trading volume going down across the board, both on the institutional side and the retail side. the bigger firms having massive layoffs, just a lot of sort of negative sentiment on the one hand. On the other hand, it's a real opportunity to focus on longer term planning, to think through strategies, to build new partnerships and relationships. Kind of the frenzy and activity of a bull market doesn't always lend itself to that long-term thinking. And the bear market is really a time where you can make those plans, make new partnerships. And that's what we're focused on at Wintermute. And yeah, so there's sort of a silver lining to it, but definitely not as much activity as there was a year ago at this time.
Yeah, well, that's definitely true. It's interesting. You mentioned that some of the bigger shops were letting go, reducing staff. And I think at least in our anecdotal experience, we see some of those bigger projects starting to refill those positions, which is good to see. And at Tron, we actually never stopped hiring through the downturn, all through the second quarter, and even now, we're still hiring, still growing. And our TVL increased, I'm reasonably certain, through the second quarter. I know our market cap did, which was good. So, but enough about me. Let's move on. Sean, the venture space. How was the second quarter for Mirana, and how do you see it recovering?
Yeah, firstly, thanks, David, for having me on the show. Very nice to be here to have a chat with David as well, Wintermute. Yeah, I guess as mentioned, like the second quarter was a bit of a double whammy. We had that macro picture really turning very sour, inflationary and interest rates pressure. And then within crypto as well, there were major like crypto specific bearish themes, right? There was the implosion of the Terra ecosystem. And then like there was a massive unwinding of over leveraged like parties, right? So sort of like a double whammy. You have the sell side pressure coming from like the global macro markets, and then the crypto specific, like within the crypto specific ecosystem. Yeah, so I guess naturally, like for ventures or for asset management, it's kind of time to be a bit more conservative regarding like investments, regarding like how we deploy. But I think that deployment can't stop because we intend to be in this space in the long run, similar to like what Dave mentioned. Yeah, so we will keep deploying, but I think we'll be a lot more selective in terms of valuations, and we do see valuations somewhat like coming down a bit as well, a bit more sensible than the hype of like Q3, Q4 last year, where you could go out there and speak to multiple project teams, and they were all calling for numbers that was reminiscent of a crazy bull market. Yeah, so I think it's kind of good for us in the sense that like things look a lot more reasonable now, a lot more sensible. Yeah, and yeah, so I kind of see that path persisting for quite a while. Probably the next 6 to 12 months will be like that, and it's actually not a bad space, not a bad thing for ventures in general. Yeah.
So does Mirana focus on one sector? So for example, DeFi mostly, or are you pretty broad based?
Yeah, for our venture space, we are pretty broad based. It's kind of similar with the way we approach asset management. We do quite a fair bit of like institutional relationships, like borrowing and lending. But opportunistically, we also participate on the DeFi space. So yeah, and DeFi TVL has dropped like by a third. I think peak was like 200-ish, and then right now we are at like 70, as David mentioned. So we do have that flexibility on mandate. Yeah,
that's great. David, DEX trading volume was down pretty significantly. Did that impact Wintermute?
Yeah, and just I do want to mention that the TVL piece is pretty impressive. That Tron's TVL has almost at what its all-time high it is now. So this is a Tron hosted show, so shout out to that.
Yeah.
But yeah, kind of a few parallels with what Sean was saying. I think first of all, in the venture space, we invest on the venture side, Wintermute as well. Just given that there's not as much of a frenzy, we have more time to do diligence on projects. We have more time to learn more about them. We don't have to make rash decisions, overnight, get a deck and sign term sheets. So that's good for us. Not just we can be more selective, but we can be more thorough in understanding what projects are building, and then align where we actually see value and potential to partner and add value. On the DEX train side, DEX train has gone down. All sorts of train have gone down. I think the biggest decline in trading is really retail, right? I think retail volume has gone down across all venues, close to 70%. On the institutional side, it's also gone down, but not as much, maybe 40-45%. And so DEX train obviously is a lot of retail trading. So that's gone down. And so it's definitely part of kind of the environment we're in right now. I think really, like Sean sort of captured, there's a lot of things going on. The macro environment is definitely a headwind for risky assets, for risky activity, and with crypto definitely sort of being in that arena. So no one knows how long it's going to take for us to get out of this macro environment, because it's largely inflationary driven, and inflation isn't something that's so predictable, and it's not so easy to adjust and change quickly. So I think as long as there's continual pressure for rates to go up, as long as there's continual inflation pressure, we will see headwinds. So it's not an issue of a quarter or 2 quarters. It could be a year or even more. But that's sort of the natural cycle of economies, the natural cycle of crypto. We're prepared for this, and we're still hiring at the same rate that we always were, which is slowly and carefully. That's kind of been our mentality. And you see companies that hired really aggressively, whether in crypto or in tech, now having to have lots of layoffs. So I think it's really about the ability to be nimble and the ability to sort of have a strategy that can be consistent through all environments. And that sounds like that's what Sean's doing, that's what we're doing. And so it's just a new environment, but it's kind of built into the business model of how we approach these things.
Yeah, that's great. And David, I made a joke earlier about global algorithmic market making doesn't mean that you make it market and algorithms. So maybe you could talk to the audience a bit about what exactly that does mean and how that business works.
Yeah, of course. So basically what market making is at its core is just we're ensuring that there is a market across all the venues that we trade on and across all the tokens that we trade. So let's just take Bitcoin, for example, right? We're ensuring that there's a market to buy and sell. We're posting those orders both on the buying side and on the selling side, on both sides of the order book. And we are algorithmically trading both sides of the order book across many venues in a market neutral way, such that we're buying at a slightly lower price than we're selling at, basically at the same time across all these venues. And we're capturing the small difference in prices, between the buy and the sell, between the bid and the ask across venues. That's the profits we make, and sort of our contribution to the market will provide is, what's called liquidity, which is essentially, again, is that market that people can come in and execute an order against. And we're doing it all algorithmically. It's not someone clicking, buy, sell. It's us building out systems that basically trade if certain conditions are met. And again, it's all done in a market neutral way. So when there's downturns, like, there have been over the past few months, we're not exposed to the direction of the market. We're just reliant on, there being enough trade volume so that when we are making market, there's people that actually are interested in trading against the liquidity that we're posting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's very helpful, very insightful. Sean, Mirana, so maybe talk to us a little bit about Mirana. Is the firm only focused on venture asset management, or is it more broad?
Yeah, great question. I think venture asset management are the first two verticals that we focus on, and there's a third one as well where we run a DAO, or rather BitDAO. We are one of the incubating partners of BitDAO. So if you look at BitDAO for what it is, it's I think probably one of the largest treasuries on in DeFi at the moment. I mean, it's all out there, chain data, you can look at it. The thing is 220,000 ETH sitting in the treasury. So the purpose of the DAO would be very similar to what the outcomes of venture investing and asset management. So it's somewhat synergistic, whatever best practices, whatever lessons we learn on asset management in our journey in venture investing, we sort of try to take that into the DAO. Of course, the nature of the DAO is that it's governed by votes, it's governed by token holders. But at least there is a team that is bringing and sharing the experience with the community. So that's the third pillar. And then the first two, like we mentioned, is venture investing, and then asset management. So in short, we have these three main activities that we focus on.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, BitDAO is very interesting. It's an interesting situation. It's kind of newer. Now, did it did it come out of Bybit?
So BitDAO was like the birth of BitDAO. Like Bybit has been contributing a percentage of their trading revenues into BitDAO, and it's a fairly huge commitment. So every day, like if Bybit trades X amount, like X amount of trading volume occurs on Bybit, contribute a percentage of that into BitDAO. Yeah, and these are like daily contributions, and these are contributions that happen on chain. So it's sort of like a linkage between like the success of Bybit and the DAO itself. But eventually this DAO would have to, you can't just keep contributing cash flows, right? The DAO itself would have to have a life of its own. So that's why I mentioned like incubation. How does the DAO grow? How does the DAO grow its treasury? How does it take the quantum leap in terms of like the AUM? Yeah. So I guess
What do you? So what will be the mission of BitDAO? Like what will they try to do? Will they create a product or bring a service to the market?
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So like in crypto space, you can do a couple of things, right? Like basically you go where you're good at, right? Like if you're good in investing, like you invest. So we started off like investing, and we did a couple of like quite I would say larger ticket size deals. Like we did a 1% token swap with FTT. So we swap each other's tokens. So we hold 1% of our FTT in our treasury right now. Yeah, so that's somewhat semblance of like investing, the investment path. And then there's another path which is like building as well, right? So I think that is something that we are going to focus on a lot, like the next 6 to 12 months. That we started as a investment DAO, and we would be pivoting towards like building as well. So I think like the next few weeks, the next few months will be pretty clear, like what we intend to do. There are a couple of proposals put out there as well. Yeah. So like to reiterate, so we started by like it's a contribution, it's a commitment from Bybit, like to funnel like funds into this DAO. And then right now the DAO has a life of its own. It can either make investment activities, or it can build. Yeah. And both but both point to growth. Like the main purpose of the DAO would be to grow its treasury.
Okay. Wow, that's really great. Thank you for explaining that. So David, back to you. Now, you said retail and institutional both fell during the quarter. Is your business more weighted toward institutional, or is it more retail focused?
Yeah, definitely focused more on institutional. So we have a few business lines, right? So it depends which one you're talking about. At its core, at our origins, we were just market making with our own capital, doing that thing I was telling you about before, sort of buying and selling across venues. And then we opened up 3 different sort of external business lines. One is our OTC desk. So we facilitate block trades of the 250 tokens we trade. So essentially, if you want to buy a large amount of any of the tokens we trade, we can give a very competitive price on that because we're trading on all these venues, because we source our price and liquidity from all these venues. So it's more efficient to go through us rather than go through those venues individually. That's one thing we do, and that we service institutions as well as accredited investors and high net worth individuals. So not retail at scale, but we do service some individuals if they meet our criteria on the compliance side. The second thing we do is we market make for tokens. So projects that are getting listed on centralized exchanges, across centralized and decentralized exchanges, we help to ensure that there's a good market, again, to make it easy for investors and traders to get in and out of positions effectively, doing that market making activity I described earlier. And the third thing we do is venture investing. So given our focus on helping to grow the crypto ecosystem, we see a lot of projects we want to support early on. So we like to invest in projects that we think are further in the ecosystem. And those are our 3 sort of external buckets of engagement. We have incubated a DEX that is a way for retail to access our liquidity via a DEX, which is permissionless. So we are working on expanding our reach so that more types of people can interact with us. So yeah, that is sort of expanding our network to a broader use case.
That's really interesting. So when you say institutions, are you talking about, and Wintermute does a lot in Europe, are you talking about like the Credit Suisse and Deutsche Banks of the world that are coming to Wintermute for help, or are they different types?
I can't say any specific names, but I can say we service entities of that size for sure. So the institutions that we service are, some of the biggest asset managers in the world. And we also service, crypto native funds or, an individual or, someone that's just starting out. As long as they meet our criteria on the compliance side and can onboard and KYC with us, we can work with them. So it really is a range of entity types, from those that come from traditional finance to those that have more crypto native roots. We really just want to help provide liquidity, provide that competitive pricing through our OTC desk to anyone that has that need.
Okay. Okay, that's really helpful.
Yeah, I would say also just we're headquartered in Europe. We have an office in Singapore. I'm based in the US, but our business is definitely global in nature. We have counterparties that trade with us from all over the world. So we do have, happen to have a lot of our personnel based in Europe, based in the UK, but the institutions, funds, projects that we work with are everywhere.
Okay, let's shift it up a little bit and talk maybe about, talk to those people in our audience who have projects and want to get projects to Wintermute into Mirana, right? You guys are both in the venture space. Sean, you're probably a bit deeper than David, but you both have exposure. So, what should a creator be thinking about as they prepare to talk to a Wintermute or a Mirana about, potentially investing in their project?
Yeah, great question. I mean, we run due diligence across a lot of projects. We see in a lot of project pitches. Yeah, so I don't think that's a one size fits all approach, but in general, we'll be looking for a couple of things, right? Number one, like, would there be a actual product market fit? Or, what we call, like, is there a total addressable market, like TAM? So some projects, like, they have obviously a great idea, but it's just that, the idea might not fit the market timing, right? It might work in the future, it might have worked in the past, but it might not like work right now. Yeah, so I think it's something like creators, project leads would have. I think that's the most fundamental step. Like, what am I building? Does what I'm building have a natural audience? If not, it's like me trying to push my idea. It might be a really good idea. It might be a very legit idea across, and that sort of like doesn't form a connection, right? Yeah. But if we get past that, then we'll be looking at projects based on like technical experience, like how experienced the team is, the track record, because a lot of projects it's not that hard, right? You can put up a very pretty, very concise PowerPoint slide. Yeah, but so we hope to go into dive in a bit onto the technical parts, like, how are you going to build this? How many guys do you have? What are the experience of these guys? What stack are you guys building on? Yeah. So that is the second part. And then the third part, I would say it's a bit more, it's not so much a science, it's maybe more like a art, like, because you need a natural like ecosystem to rally around your project as well. So we'll be looking at things like who else are you speaking to? Who else is on board? Who's helping you grow? Because in crypto, it's hard to grow by oneself. Like, do you have the right kind of strategic partners on board with you? And for us as well, like, we'll be asking ourselves the question of like, how can we add value strategically instead of just giving you a check or giving you a seed investment? Yeah. So yeah, I think there are many factors, but like I would say like these three would be a sort of like a good like framework to start with.
Yeah. I really like the last one about their kind of ecosystem, really, and who are they partnering with, and who can they collaborate with to help grow their business, right? That's really I think that's something that's very unique to the crypto world.
Yeah, I agree, and and frankly it's a sort of like an attribute that I like a lot. Yeah, so for ourselves, it's like we have this number of portfolio companies, and as and when we see synergies across like project A and project B and project C, if we see some synergies, it's pretty much in our nature to just like link them up and say, hey, these guys are doing something that I think that sounds like you could be interested in. You were speaking about on this topic and they are doing it. Why don't you guys have a chat? Yeah, so that's kind of where we want to bring value to. And that's
Yeah.
kind of like why we even look out for this, because we know that in crypto, in this space, the more you have an ecosystem, a natural support network around you, the probability of success of your project is going to increase exponentially.
Yeah, I agree. David, Wintermute, do they follow a similar kind of process, or you mentioned earlier you're spending more time kind of evaluating deals? What areas are you spending that additional time?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there's definitely some overlap with what Sean mentioned, and even some overlap in our portfolios. I believe we're both investors in Treehouse. Is that right?
Yeah.
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 So there's one, for example, that we both came to that conclusion, independently, a great DeFi analytics platform. But yeah, I think for us, there's a few things. First, we want to find projects where we can help, so one of our focuses as market makers is being very active on DeFi. We're trading on chain, on multiple chains and multiple ecosystems in a high frequency manner. And when there's a project that, let's say it's a DEX on a chain, or it's a lending borrowing protocol, we can actually use it. We can actually potentially bootstrap liquidity, help get it started, even give user feedback as DeFi users. We really like that, because we want to not just be investors, but we want to add strategic value so that, by virtue of us partnering with the project, it can be better for both of us. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing is definitely just a focus on DeFi in general. We'll invest across the crypto ecosystem, infrastructure, GameFi, really anything, but DeFi is definitely our expertise, and that's, our focus area. And then the third thing I'd say is, I think Sean put it really well about the piece of art being so important. You really don't know where these projects are going to go. You don't know where the market's going to go. So much can pivot, so much can change, especially for the early stage projects. So what you want to see is that they have a thorough understanding of the problem they're attacking, and that they have a good network of people and the ability to build a network of people to help tackle that problem, right? So it's, sort of a combination of having the right product that focus on the right problem, and the right people that are going to, either internally, advisors, networks, investors. People can be all sorts of ways tied into the project, but it's really people and product at the end of the day. And a lot of it is just intuition, right? When you meet a founder that you feel like he really gets the problem, or she really gets the problem, has thoughtful answers to your questions, has anticipated the things that you might challenge them on, that's when you start to feel comfortable. And maybe the last thing is just, kind of a humility to learn something new, to be open to change, because especially for early stage projects, they are going to have to pivot and adapt certain aspects. So you just want to see that they have that ability to adapt on the fly.
Yeah, that's great. That's very insightful, guys. Thank you both for those answers. One of the areas that seems to be pretty hot right now, for lack of a better term, is GameFi. GameFi seems like it's maybe some of those projects might be tougher to get a handle on, because you never, at least for me, it seems hard to understand what people are going to want to play. So, do you have any insights into that space as to, one, is it really a hot space? And then two, how do you even think about, wanting to invest in a game, and what might be the factors because it's a little different from a traditional business?
I'm gonna go for it, Sean.
Yeah, we had these discussions internally as well, and I think it's worth talking about, like, even to share, even within the team, right? We have different opinions across the spectrum, right? Like one spectrum would be, Web2 games are so much more like superior in terms of gaming experience. The big game studios, the experiential the experience of playing a Web2 game, it's so much richer than what we see in Web3 so far. So that's one end of the spectrum, right? And then on the other end, it's like, but Web3 has that extra element where you could actually interact with the community through blockchain, right? And you can do like, and GameFi offers another element, which is maybe play to earn, and then from there you branch out to X to earn. X to earn meaning like do something to walk to earn, whatever. There are a lot. It's like a whole thematic sort of like a branch, growing up like this. This area could grow a lot. alternate between both spectrums, But I think that finally, in terms of venture, we want to back the right projects, right? So there can be some give and take on like where each where we sit on the spectrum between firms, between venture firms, between even venture partners, right? It's a lot. It's quite philosophical. And it's quite a bet on the future, right? But finally, you want to, if we do back something, you want to back a project, like the fundamentals still exist. There seems to be a good product market fit. The team is technical enough to deliver, and like the ecosystem. So we feel that as long as we stand on like our pillars, like we can't go really wrong. Within this space.
That's great.
And the last thing to add, I think we are moderate on this. So within the spectrum, I would say we are somewhere here. Like we are not on either extremes. So
from an investment perspective, do you try to kind of spread your bets, so to speak, across maybe a wider range of games? Because I always say, at least to me, who would have thought people would have loved to play Minecraft, right? That to me, it seemed very unappealing, but obviously I'm in the minority there. But people love it. But who, if you had a chance to be an early investor in that and you saw it, would you have thought, yes, millions and millions of people are going to play this game?
So pixelated, poor graphics, but with Minecraft, and then you have Roblox, and then the next derivatives of it, and it's the whole, which is why we never want to rule out like a sector, and even though we might think that, oh, that doesn't work out, that might not work out, but if we find the right project, a right team to back in that space, we'll put something there, and we say like, okay, this is our seed, this is where we participate, and if it takes off, fine. If not, we know that this project, and the last point, like David mentioned, right, like good projects team, they can always pivot, right? They don't have like this thing called like linear thinking. They are not so binary. They listen to the ground, and then they can pivot. So it comes back to the fundamentals again, right? In terms of
that's great. Very insightful. David?
I'll just say on GameFi, like I have no clue what games are going to be off, right? Like absolutely no clue.
You and I could be in that club.
Yeah, I mean, no clue. And the only way I would feel good, about a particular game or project around a game is basically meeting the founders, being impressed by them more than the game. Right? Because I don't know what games are going to take off. It's almost asking like what YouTube video is going to be viral. I mean, it's just so many idiosyncratic things, and if someone could predict it, then they would build a game, and they would do it. It's not an easy thing to predict. So I think for us, GameFi is definitely not a priority. We're just sort of open to the wide universe of everything in crypto. But actually, just speaking of projects in particular, I did want to give a shout out to the 200 projects that at least were part of the hackathon finals that submitted their projects. And there was one in particular that I really liked. I don't know if this is the place to give a shout out, but
go ahead.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm just one judge, one vote, but I thought DAO Cake was really interesting. So DAO Cake was a way to sort of measure and reward contributions for what people, do for a DAO. And, it's a problem that any company has, is how do you distribute equity and compensation among founders and early employees, like who is really doing what and who earns what rewards. This is sort of a whole way to do that through smart contracts that basically, I think addresses a real problem with DAOs of, encouraging accountability, incentivizing people to do things and to get rewarded for those activities. I just thought it was attacking a real problem. It, I don't know if it had the full roadmap of every way it was going to implement its solution, but at least it had an inkling of how it would start to approach that issue. And then I think, it probably you can apply that philosophy to any project. So,
that's interesting. Let's talk about that. So they and I don't know about this company. I haven't looked through any of the projects yet. But so it's called DAO Cake.
DAO Cake, yep.
Okay. And how do they measure contribution though? Right? Is it through activity or outcomes?
Yeah, so it's like a whole consensus mechanism where all the DAO members sort of vote on contributions and create all sorts of criteria up front that once they're met, people get rewarded with various tokens for their contributions. So it's really just sort of a, kind of a process for how to incentivize rewards. And again, I don't think it's a fully baked project, so to speak. It's just the idea of a project.
Yeah.
But what I liked about it is that, it's addressing a real problem of encouraging incentivizing more activity and accountability for members of DAOs, because I think that's a problem right now. There's all these DAOs out there, but what are the members actually doing? Who's actually contributing, and how are those contributors getting rewarded? So that was kind of the core reason why I liked it, and that's probably my general approach to how I evaluate projects. If someone's tackling a real problem and just starting to scratch at a solution, their first scratch might not actually get it, but at least they're going at a real problem and searching for that solution with a thoughtful approach. And then eventually, if you have the right approach and it's a true problem, it will lead to success.
It's a great statement. Great statement. Yeah, and I think that's probably what makes GameFi kind of difficult, or gaming in general, is that most people probably don't know the game space well enough to understand if a game is addressing a problem, which, from what you said, what you said, I think makes perfect sense. And that's probably why I don't understand the game space that well either. It's hard to tell if it's addressing a market because the problems aren't as obvious as maybe they are elsewhere.
Yep, exactly. With gaming, it's almost like, not is it addressing a problem, but is it entertaining? Is it engaging? Is it fun? And that is such a subjective question that, I don't have an ability to predict, but I'm not a gamer. So, I mean, growing up, I played like Madden and sports games. I didn't play, maybe Mario Kart, Zelda, but, not like a true gamer, like the people that are building these gaming projects are.
Yeah, no, I hear you.
Did you play games growing up, Sean? Did you play Mario or Zelda, or maybe something more deeper than that?
I think like yourself, I played all the sports games, all the EA sports, rather than, So within the venture team, of course, we have another partner who specializes a bit more on the GameFi side of things. For the reasons that not all of us play games, not all of us understand that space. It doesn't come naturally to us. So,
so when you look out geographically, and you're both global, are there any regions that kind of seem to have more activity than others? Are you seeing more activity still, or more activity at all, in maybe coming out of Asia versus US or Europe out of, versus, another area?
I'll speak for where I am. I mean, I'm based in Singapore, and what we've seen is, I think that there is a bit of a migration or movement of guys from Hong Kong and from Shanghai, because of the situation over there, into Singapore. But so we end up with quite a vibrant community here. So I think that makes someone like myself in this within the ecosystem, it becomes very easy to meet partners, to explore things with others. Because sometimes a face-to-face meet, I mean, we meet like that, it's great, but sometimes a face-to-face meet is equally, or if not more, valuable.
I completely agree with you there. Meeting face-to-face is always best when it can happen.
But the flip side is that, it becomes so, in a sense, like there's so much activity going on. Almost every week is some kind of blockchain week, and I've lost track. Some guys will ping me and say, hey, are you going for this? It's blah 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 blockchain week. And I'm like, what? I thought it was something else blockchain week the other week. But that's a good thing. So at least for Singapore, we do see that. Of course, like we do expect, like Singapore is like kind of like conservative kind of like country or state. So we do expect like some kind of regulatory scrutiny to come in at some point. But I think everyone who has made the move here has already like sort of like factored that in.
That's great.
So I think there's definitely a lot of activity in Singapore. We have an office there, but I actually don't know that region that well. I've focused on the US and North America and South America as well. As far as the US goes, I think that's not slowing down. I think it's only growing in terms of activity, probably in two ways. One, in terms of the projects and the builders, so to speak. You're seeing a lot of developers and product managers coming from Web2, from the Facebooks, the Googles, whatever's, moving over to Web3 jobs, building out protocols. So you're seeing that across the US. You're also seeing on the investing and trading side, institutions, asset managers of all sizes, building out crypto strategies, whether that's part of some internal broader strategy, including crypto as part of a multi-asset class strategy, or whether it's executives at some sort of esteemed hedge fund leaving to start a crypto fund or leaving to join some crypto company. We're seeing that all across the US. And I'd say as far as where the most activity is happening, I think there's been all this talk about the crypto capital being Miami or San Francisco. I wish it was Boston. I love Boston. Boston is the greatest sports city in the world. We are great championships for 2 decades. But as far as crypto capital, we're not there. I have to hand it to my personal rivals in New York City. I really think that's where the most activity in the US is, at least for now. And because it's really a perfect blend of capital markets, of traditional finance, and innovation, tech, all sorts of forces coming together. It's a global city. So yeah, New York to me is still the crypto capital of the US, both from a technology innovation perspective and from capital markets, funds, and traditional financial players moving into the space with offices in New York or in that area.
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, Miami actually would get my vote for crypto capital, but I might be weather biased.
I think Miami does a great job marketing, and
yeah,
I enjoy going to Miami more than New York. Definitely sign me up for a trip to Miami any day of the week. But I just, if I want to do business, it's more likely going to happen in New York. Yeah.
Well, I think your view about the U.S., and I can only speak to the U.S. That's where most of my exposure is spot on. Just attending conferences throughout the second quarter. If you were just in the conference and didn't know, you would have never known that the market was crashing and everything was down. People were, they were crowded, people were excited. And the biggest change, I thought, was the number of traditional companies there walking around trying to learn what's happening, learn who the companies are, who the players are. And they range from asset management, a lot of asset managers there actually, to major brands. So it was really a diverse group of traditional companies. Not only were they walking around to learn, but they were hiring too. I saw them in certain areas. A consensus there was a place for job interviews, traditional asset managers lining up to interview people for these new Web3 crypto rules. So I think that's a great sign. It didn't slow down at all just because the market moved a little lower or a lot lower, but still.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And even just like a shout out to Boston, Fidelity and digital assets team, here based in Boston, they hire fast enough, right? They have dozens of openings, and all of these big established firms have dozens of openings. So yeah, I see the industry is only growing in that way.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's see, we're getting ready to wrap up. Sean, any closing thoughts you might have for our audience?
No, I just wanted to echo what you guys mentioned about the hiring. So hiring is a function of the desire to grow in the space, and we kind of see the same as well, we in Singapore and across the globe. So I mean, I think a lot of where the crypto market is headed hinges on in the short term, it hinges on it's highly correlated to the global markets. But we do take a view that over time, this sector would outperform because of the number of builders, the number of the participation of traditional finance, funds, asset managers in the space. Yeah, so I think the question for us is it's not so much a statement; it's more a question and echoing where we are at. We think that this is the next 6 to 12 months or 18 months. If it's a bear, it's a great time to build. And so the question we are always asking is like, what do we want to build? Like, what do we want to build across our verticals, right? Like for venture space, what should we be looking at, for the next leg? For asset management likewise, and for BitDAO, like, where we have come to that pivot where we not only make investments, but we want to build. I think similar for Tron DAO as well. Right? You guys did, things with like USDD and, running this ongoing hackathon, to assemble builders together. Yeah, so I think that team hasn't changed in the last couple of cycles. So it's more like we are in this cycle again and kind of like, what do we want to do better or improve on from the last cycle where, building and staying in that space has proven to be a, age-old working strategy. Yeah. Yeah.
Great. Thank you. David, any closing thoughts?
Yeah, I'd say first, thanks for having me. Really a great conversation. Second of all, yeah, I'd say just for anyone that's listening, for figuring out ways to work with Wintermute, like I said, there's really 3 things we do with external parties: OTC trading, market making projects, and investing in projects and crypto companies. So if you think we can be helpful with any of those areas, feel free to reach out. We're always interested in finding new opportunities to partner. Definitely excited to explore more about the Tron ecosystem, projects building in Tron. So, feel free to reach out if there's anything you think we can do together. And yeah, it is really exciting time, right? The bear market is a time to strategize, to kind of dream big, to think about where the future is headed, right? And build towards that. So I'm actually really enjoying it. I only got into crypto in 2020. Before that, I was in traditional finance. So I've only known a bull market until the past, quarter or two. And it's just refreshing to have that time to think and learn and meet other people that are really in it for the long term. So yeah, I gotta say, I'm kind of excited about this phase that we're in right now.
That was very well said. Bear markets are a time to build. I love that quote. So thank you both for joining me to have this conversation. I think it's been wonderful. It's been great to talk with you both. And I'm sure our audience is going to enjoy this very much. So thank you. And we will talk again soon. All right. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.